It wasn't always possible to find wealth in Storage Wars. There were some real stars in the people. Each episode felt like something you couldn't look away from because they fought, laughed, and took chances. There are, however, a few faces that have been missing lately, and it's not because they stopped bidding. They lost touch with each other when no one was looking. But which names made the most hushed sounds? Also, why does it hurt like they were just here yesterday? These are the sad deaths of 10 popular Storage Wars cast members. Dave Hester is number 10. Just what if a TV show isn't all fun and games? What if there is something darker going on behind all the yelling, bidding, and laughing? People are talking like that about Storage Wars. Strange things are being seen by people who have watched the show for years. It's not just about whose room has the coolest stuff or who has the most money these days. It's about how some group members got sick, hurt, or even close to dying. People from the show started having big troubles one by one. Some got hurt, some got really sick, and some were so close to not making it out alive. That's when people began to think that the show might have been cursed. It wasn't like Dave Hester was just another guy on Storage Wars. He was a big star and had the biggest voice on the show thanks to his famous Yoop. He always got the upper hand, played tough, and made sure everyone was looking at him. Most people who watch reality shows look forward to the drama that Dave added to the show, but in 2012, he said the show was fake, and he didn't stop there. He said that the lockers were stuffed with things on purpose to make the show more interesting. He showed up in court and made a formal claim. A&E's network didn't like that at all. Because of this, they took him off the show. After the whole story, most people would have chosen to keep quiet. Dave didn't change his mind, though. He was brought back by Andy. They may have seen that he was important to the show. They might have also believed that people would forget what he said. In any case, Dave came back. His life would never be the same again, though. As soon as Dave got back, he was in a lot more trouble than just the law. He had a hemorrhagic stroke, which means this: his brain bled. This took place because of sleep apnea and high blood pressure, which a lot of people have but don't always take seriously. He almost died from the stroke. One minute he was on TV, and the next he was stuck in a hospital bed and couldn't move or speak. The doctors didn't think he would make it at that point. But Dave managed to stay alive. Fans were glad to see that he was still living and trying to move on, but a lot of them started to wonder why this keeps happening to people from the show. A lot of people told stories, not just Dave. A lot of the cast started having strange problems as well. Some people were worried about their health. Some people were in strange crashes. The show was meant to be about people who find lost treasures. Instead, though, it looked like the group kept walking into trouble. You start to wonder if there is really something strange going on behind the scenes of Storage Wars. If so, who might be the next person to suffer? The 9th person is Mark Bulello. People all over the world knew Mark Bulello from the TV show Storage Wars. He was found dead in his car early Monday morning. He had parked his car in the garage of Bulello Inc., the company he owned and ran in Simi Valley, California. When the police got there, they confirmed that he had died from taking in carbon monoxide and exhaust fumes. Even though it was hard to believe, all the signs pointed to the fact that he had killed himself. He was only 40 years old. Mark had always been different on TV, and it wasn't just because of the work he did. It was also how he carried himself. He was known as Rico Suave to people who watched Storage Wars, a name that fit with how he dressed and behaved at the sales. He came with lots of cash and often wore flashy clothes. He was ready to outbid everyone if he thought something valuable was hidden in a storage box. Things may have been different behind the scenes, though. Before he was found, Mark had been caught at his auction business 2 days before for having methamphetamines and being drunk. He already had a court date for February 19th. That means he was already in a lot of trouble with the law, and this probably made everything feel like it was too much for him to handle. When Bolelo got out of the situation without going to jail, it seemed to have a negative effect on his emotional health. The weight of this made him feel so insecure that he asked his fiancée, Elizabeth Metzides, to stay with him at work during that time. Elizabeth thought he was better when she left after the visit. They found his body the next day, which was sad. Mark was more than just a TV star. He was born in Portugal but lived in Brazil until he was about 14 years old. He started making his life from scratch after coming to the United States. He used to own a video game shop called Game Exchange before he became famous. Later in 2011, he opened an auction house where he could buy and sell things that people had forgotten about or left behind. Mark got a lot of attention in 2011 when he helped actor Nicolas Cage get back a very rare comic book. Issue 1 of Action Comics was the first one to show Superman. It came out in 1938. It had been more than 10 years since that comic was taken from Cage's house. Mark found it while going through the things that were in the storage box he had bought. When people learned the truth about what he had found, they talked about more than just how much the comic was worth, which was almost $1 million. He made sure the comic book got back to its owner, which impressed a lot of people. That story has been linked to his name ever since. We remember those stories with sadness now, though, because the truth is, no matter how sure of themselves or happy someone seems in public, no one really knows what they are going through on the inside. Officers found Mark inside his car when they got there. He was not breathing when they got there, even though help had been called. His official cause of death was given as asphyxiation from taking in the fumes. 8th place goes to Gunter Nayoda. A member of the Storage Wars family has died. They were a warm, funny, and deeply kind presence on screen. Although he had been on the show since its 4th season, Gunter Nayoda passed away at the age of 67 after a long battle with lung cancer. Renee, his son, who many fans also know from the show, broke the sad news in a moving video he shared on social media. That his father's health had gotten so bad that doctors could not do anything to help, he said. Renee told the truth about everything, saying that Gunter had been told he had lung cancer about 6 months before. He said that his dad had smoked for about 30 years and that the damage had already been done, even though he had quit for a while. Renee said in the video that his dad's lungs were full of holes and his body could no longer handle it. Gunter died in his sleep while he was in the hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah. His youngest son, Ricky, was with him during his last hours. Because so many people had grown to love his father over the years, Renee said he decided to tell everyone about this. People rarely said bad things about TV characters, but Gunter was one of the few people who never did. He was a pleasure to work with, and fans always looked forward to seeing him on TV. Renee then thanked everyone for their nice words and explained that they had kept his dad's illness a secret because they were sure he would get better. They had no idea how things would turn out. Renee and his wife Casey had already become famous as the Bargain Hunters. They ran a thrift store in Poway, California. Gunter joined the show a few years after they did. In season 8, Gunter joined his son, and he quickly became a fan favorite. Gunter said that he loved playing the bass and taking pictures. He played with Michael Schenker, Leslie West, and Pat Travers over the years. Gunter was in a few films as well, such as Do Not Disturb in the Haunting of Death Valley Junction. He was born in Austria and moved to Las Vegas with his family in 1990. There he made a life for himself. Reports say that Gunter had to fly to Utah for emergency surgery. His family hoped that things would get better, but the illness had already gotten too bad. Fans were having a really hard time because Gunter had just become an important part of the show. People were getting to know him better. His time on Storage Wars may not have been as long as some others, but the way he made people feel will always be remembered. 7th, Mo Pregolf. People watched Storage Wars with Mo Pregolf for years. Texas, bids on forgotten trunks, dresses in ways no one else would, and jokes like nothing could ever get him down. But this man was so much more than that. He drove a taxi, worked as a doctor, and ran a business. He had a family. Morris Mo Pregolf not only liked pretty things, he knew what they meant. He looked for unique art, old furniture, and anything else that had a story for more than 30 years. Then, after 10 years of selling things in Dallas, he opened his own store and named it River Regency Modern. Most people would miss the little things that Mo saw, and with the help of Robert, his young shop manager, he kept the store running. In spite of his job as a doctor, But how did someone like Mo, who was always stylish and full of energy, do all of this and become one of the most recognizable faces on TV auctions? He worked with Mary Padian a lot, and the two of them were great together. After a while, Mary moved on to the big show in California. Mo, on the other hand, stayed in Texas to continue his medical work. People around him called him the Doc. He stayed with the show for all 3 years, but who was he when the cameras stopped rolling? Mo did more than just run his shop and his medical office. In his spare time, he liked art, music, gardening, teaching, swimming, and hoops. He liked going on trips and doing things that meant something to him. He made sure to leave a mark everywhere he went. Everything he said about his wife, Michaela, who he called my wife for life, showed how much he loved her. They were married for 19 years. In his last years, she was the one who stayed by his side and helped him deal with his health problems. The bad news is that this trend stopped all of a sudden when he got sick. He had been sick for 6 years, and even though he fought it as long as he could, he finally died on March 4th, 2021. There was more to Mo than just being on a TV show. He brought life to a business where most people only saw broken and dusty things. 6th place goes to Brandon Sheets. Brian Sheets was known for always being next to his dad, Daryl, on Storage Wars. The two of them worked well together. Things changed quickly in 2017, though, when Brandon was fired from the show. The makers said it was because of budget cuts, but Brandon's dad stayed on, so he had to decide what to do next. Because of this, he tried many jobs, such as selling real estate. He eventually got a job driving a UPS truck. At first, it seemed like just another job, but one day something terrible happened that almost killed him. In early 2022, Brandon wrote about what happened on Instagram. He included a picture of the wrecked truck and talked about what happened that night. He said that he had been sleeping in the back of the UPS semi-truck and that his buddy didn't have work that day. While Brandon was asleep, someone else was taking over. Going 70 miles per hour, this co-driver hit another truck. Brandon said that when he woke up, it was like a bomb had gone off and everything was a mess. He was taken to a hospital in Texas right away and then sent back to Arizona to start getting better. Even though he was only slightly hurt, he made it clear that the whole thing was very upsetting and that UPS didn't help him as much as they should have. The company didn't give him any workers' compensation, and they didn't even pay for the things he lost in the crash, he said. The fact that this could have all been avoided by giving better safety training, especially to drivers who work together on long road trips, made things even worse. At the end of his message, he said that everyone needed to work together to make people more aware of safety, and that big companies like UPS should do a better job of taking care of their employees. Even stranger is the fact that Brandon isn't the only one from Storage Wars who has had a story like this. Not long before that, His dad, Daryl Sheets, had a very bad health scare. And this wasn't a small matter. Lots of fans know Daryl as the gambler on the show. He has been on Storage Wars from the start. He came back in season 13 and kept going through seasons 14 and 15. He took a short break when the show stopped for a while. But when fans saw that season 16 would start on June 7th, 2025, Daryl wasn't mentioned as part of the new cast. While all of this was going on, some people online started sharing false rumors that he had died. People could see on his social media that he was still living, though. Not only that, but he also opened a company in Havasu, Arizona, called Show Me Your Junk in 2023. But in 2019, Daryl had a very bad health issue that sent him to the hospital. He said he had been sick for 3 months at the time. Besides that, he had a small heart attack later on. He wrote in a post that he later took down that doctors told him he had congestive heart failure and something very bad was going on in one of his lungs. There was a lot to handle at once. The fact that it had been building up for months scared him even more because he hadn't seen it coming. He had to have surgery in the end, and a month later he told them that his heart function was back to 40%, which meant it was getting better. He could also take off the defibrillator gear he had to wear after the heart scare. At the time, though, not everything was fine. He told Daryl that he wasn't totally safe yet because his heart wasn't fully strong. He was still hoping that things would get better over time. The fifth person is Dan Dotson. Before Storage Wars, Dan Dotson already had a great reputation in the sale world. After learning how sales worked, he set up his own business called American Auctioneers. Soon after, his wife Laura joined him in business. The two of them worked together and became one of the most famous couples on the show. Dan and Laura were often seen together, running bids and getting people excited, just like Jared and Brandy. Before 2014, everything looked great, but then something terrible happened that could have changed everything for good. The day began normally, but Dan soon started to feel sick. As he talked about having a bad headache and mixing up his words in ways that didn't make sense, Laura knew right away that something was very wrong. When she looked at him, she saw that his eyes had turned back. His legs were giving way, and the color of his skin changed from red and purple to a scary bluish green. She called for help as soon as she saw this, and stayed with him as things quickly got worse. What Dan was going through wasn't just a headache or a passing out spell. There were 2 brain tumors going on at the same time. That doesn't work out for most people. And there was a moment when it looked like Dan might not make it. He did it, though. Later, doctors said that one reason he lived was that he wasn't bleeding too much in his head when it all happened. This meant that they had a better chance of being able to help him. His neurosurgeon, Dr. M. Asif Taki, told him that it was rare for someone to survive something so bad, but it was possible. After he felt better, Dan stayed in the hospital for a while. Laura was with him the whole time. He changed while he was lying in that hospital bed. He told Laura, "Guess what? I no longer smoke." He almost lost everything in that moment, and he didn't want to waste any more time doing things that could hurt his health. Fourth, in 2022, Dan and Laura Dotson almost lost their son. You might have thought that Dan Dotson's worst days were over after all he had been through, like the time he almost died from a brain tumor. It was too bad that more pain was still around the bend. Because they almost lost their son, Garrett Dotson, this life-threatening event shook him and his wife, Laura, in a way that no parent ever wants to think about. Before that, one of their French bulldogs attacked Dan out of the blue and almost bit off one of his fingers. It was another strange and painful event. What happened in 2020, on the other hand, was much scarier and painful. It was only 22 years old, and their son Garrett had gone to Arizona to see his partner. And while they were on that trip, something terrible happened that quickly changed everything. Garrett was shot in Arizona, and the wounds were so bad. It was amazing that he was able to call for help on his own. After the fact, Laura told the reporters that Garrett called 911 even though he was badly hurt and barely holding on. But by the time he got to a nearby hospital, things were quickly getting worse, and the doctors knew they couldn't treat him there. Due to how bad his situation had become, they had to act quickly and fly him to Las Vegas. Laura said that the bullet had hit Garrett in the vena cava, which is one of the biggest veins in his body. He started to bleed inside because of this. Because things were so bad, the doctor had to jump on the operating table and hold everything together with his hands while he tried to stop the bleeding. Garrett's heart was being massaged the whole time so that he would stay alive on the trip to Las Vegas. Garrett was already in a very bad way when all of this happened. They took him right into surgery as soon as they got to Las Vegas. They were able to fix the damage and save his life, even though the chances were against them. After the fact, Dan told them how grateful they were that day that many people worked together to save their son's life. As little as one mistake could have changed how it all turned out, they knew. The guy who hurt Garrett was later caught by police. His name is Garrett Wilder. Not only was he charged with other major crimes, but he was also charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault and disorderly conduct with a weapon. Brandy Passante is the third one. When Brandy Passante first showed up on Storage Wars in its first season, no one thought her fame would spread so quickly. Because she was close with her partner, Jared Schultz, she became one of the show's most recognizable faces. Brandy and Jared had such a good relationship that A&E gave them their own show in 2014, which they called Married to the Job. It brought her even more attention with this move. But this taste of fame came with some bad things. Brandy talked about something she had kept secret for a long time in 2020. When she talked to Danny Jordan on the Dad Diary, she talked about how fame had changed her. She said that things started to get weird when more people recognized her in public. She began to get letters that didn't seem like fans. Some of them were so scary that they made her worry about her safety and the safety of her children. She also said that things got so bad that she had to move to a gated neighborhood with guards on duty all the time to feel safe. Because of this, she needed to see a doctor because everything was getting to be too much for her. She stopped living normally for a while because she was afraid to go outside and be seen. What she said was that things got better over time, and she felt more like herself again with help. However, this was only the beginning of the awful things that happened to her. Who else on the Storage Wars crew had a scary situation where they almost died? Let's find out. Second place goes to Barry Weiss. Many people knew Barry Weiss from the TV show Storage Wars, even though he had never bought a storage unit before. Tom Beers, who had known him for years, helped him get on the show, and helped make the show as well. But Barry wasn't like the other people on the show who wanted to make money off of the things they found. It was his favorite thing to look for, strange and interesting things. He would sometimes even bring psychics to the sales to try to guess what was hidden in the units. He didn't mind spending money on strange things, even if they weren't worth much. The glasses, skeleton gloves, and crazy cars he wore made him stand out, such as the chicken-themed one he drove to sales. People liked him because he wasn't like everyone else. A lot of fans were upset when he stopped going on the show and didn't understand why he went so quickly. But in April 2019, Barry and a friend were in a terrible motorbike accident in Los Feliz, Los Angeles. They hit a car head-on, and the accident was so bad that both of them had to be taken to the hospital right away. People were really scared about Barry's injuries because they were so much worse. Though there were rumors that he wasn't around after the crash, that's pretty much it. There is Jared Schultz and Brandy Passante in first place. Now that Storage Wars was going, everyone was interested in Jared Schultz and Brandy Passante. Everyone liked how they worked and laughed together and thought they knew everything. You might not know this, but they had a separate show called Brandy and Jared, Married to the Job. They never got married. Still, they stayed together for a long time, raised their kids, and built their life around sales and used things. Things began to change over time, though. They were no longer together by 2021. On the first show of season 13, they said it straight out, and even though they weren't dating anymore, they worked on the show together. After the split, things seemed fine between them at first. As a result, there were no big public fights. A lot of people thought they had moved on and were just acting cool for the cameras. That was until May 2021. When something happened that made everyone see things differently. TMZ said that Jared was being charged with assaulting Brandy in their home. They were said to have met at an Orange County pub. When Jared showed up, things got tense for Brandy and her friends. He didn't leave even though she asked him to several times. Then things got worse and stories say they got physical. Jared didn't say anything about this news while it was going around, which made fans even more confused. They were not sure what to think. Before Brandy shared something on Instagram, they only had news stories and guesses. This woman showed a tattoo that said, "Free." The writing under it said a lot without naming anyone. She said the tattoo meant she had been through something that could have hurt her. She talked about how lucky she was to have gotten out of a tough spot where many people never make it. She also said she was glad she felt safe and at peace. Whose loss hurts you the most now that you've heard these stories? Do you believe the people who say this show is being rigged behind the scenes? Drop your ideas in the box below. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you like this movie. Check out the other videos on your screen before you leave.